In the early morning hours of a calm European summer day in 1914, the world stood on the edge of something it did not yet understand. Streets were quiet, newspapers were thin, cafes were opening as usual, and people believed the future would look much like the past. No one woke up that day thinking it would become the first day of the deadliest conflict humanity had ever seen. And yet, within just 24 hours, Europe would declare war. Alliances would ignite like a line of gunpowder, and history would be permanently rewritten. This is the story of how World War I began in a single day. To understand day one of World War I, you have to forget the idea that wars begin with explosions. This war began with paper, ink, signatures, and fear. It began with telegrams sent in panic, secret meetings held behind closed doors, and leaders making irreversible decisions under unbearable pressure. Europe, in 1914, was not looking for war, but it was prepared for it in the most dangerous way possible. For decades before 1914, Europe had been living under the illusion of peace. Empires were strong, economies were growing, technology was advancing, and people believed war between great powers was outdated. But beneath the surface, Europe was a continent full of tension. Nationalism was rising, empires were cracking, militaries were expanding, and alliances were locking countries into promises they would soon regret. The spark came on June 28, 1914, when Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated in Sarajevo. At first, it did not seem like a world-changing event. Political assassinations had happened before. But this one hit a fragile system at exactly the wrong moment. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia. Serbia denied responsibility. Russia quietly supported Serbia. Germany backed Austria-Hungary. France stood with Russia. Britain watched nervously. The dominoes were already standing. For weeks, Europe waited. Diplomats negotiated. Newspapers speculated. People went on with their lives. Many believed the crisis would pass like others before it. But behind the scenes, military timetables were being prepared. Generals warned their governments that once mobilization began, it could not be stopped. Trains, soldiers, supplies, and millions of men were now part of a rigid plan that allowed no room for hesitation. Then came the day that changed everything. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. It was the first official declaration of World War I, though no one called it that yet. Artillery began firing across the Danube. What seemed like a regional conflict instantly became a global threat. The question was no longer if Europe would go to war, but how fast. Russia faced a brutal decision. If it abandoned Serbia, it would lose influence and credibility. If it mobilized its army, Germany would see it as an act of war. On July 30th, Russia ordered full mobilization. This single decision pushed Europe past the point of no return. Germany responded exactly as its generals had planned for years. On August 1st, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia. Church bells rang. Crowds gathered in the streets. Many believed the war would be short, glorious, and decisive. Young men rushed to enlist, convinced they would be home by Christmas. They had no idea what awaited them. But day one was not finished. Germany now faced a nightmare scenario, war on two fronts, to avoid fighting Russia in the east and France in the west at the same time. Germany activated the Schlieffen Plan, a massive military strategy designed for speed. The plan required Germany to strike France first by marching through neutral Belgium. It was risky, aggressive, and left no room for diplomacy. On August 3rd, Germany declared war on France. France responded immediately. Mobilization orders went out across the country, trains filled with soldiers. Families said goodbye at stations, believing separation would be brief. The French army prepared to defend its borders, unaware that the real invasion would come from an unexpected direction. When German troops crossed into Belgium, everything changed. Belgium was neutral, protected by international treaties. Britain had promised to defend Belgian neutrality. For years, British leaders had debated whether they would truly go to war for such a reason. Now, the moment had arrived. Germany demanded passage. Belgium refused. German armies advanced anyway. On August 4, 1914, Britain declared war on Germany. In just 24 hours, Europe was at war. For great powers had declared war. Alliances had activated. Millions of soldiers were mobilizing. Naval fleets were moving. Colonial empires were being drawn in. What began as a dispute in the Balkans had exploded into a world war overnight. The speed of day one shocked even those who had prepared for it. There was no dramatic final warning, no last-minute rescue. Once the first declaration was made, the system collapsed with terrifying efficiency. Every decision triggered another. Every delay was seen as weakness. Fear drove action, and action eliminated choice. People across Europe reacted with a mix of excitement and dread. In London, crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, singing patriotic songs. In Berlin, citizens cheered beneath waving flags. In Paris, mobilization posters appeared on every wall. Few understood the scale of destruction that was about to unfold. World War I, Day One, was not marked by massive battles. It was marked by commitment. Once war was declared, governments surrendered control to their war plans. Diplomacy died. Momentum took over. And millions of lives were placed on a path they could no longer escape. What makes Day One of World War I so haunting is how human it was. Leaders were tired, afraid, and under pressure. Many believed they were acting defensively. Many thought war was inevitable and simply wanted to strike first. No one believed it would last for years. No one imagined trenches, gas attacks, or entire generations lost. The tragedy of World War I is not just what happened on the battlefield, but how easily it began. By the end of that first day, Europe had crossed a line it could never uncross. The war would spread to the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. The United States would eventually join. Empires would collapse. Borders would be redrawn. And the world would never be the same again. Yet all of it began with decisions made in a single day. Understanding World War I Day One is essential because it shows how modern wars truly start. Not with villains and heroes, but with fear, miscalculation, and systems designed for conflict. It shows how alliances can trap nations, how speed can replace wisdom, and how peace can vanish faster than anyone expects. As the sun set on Europe that day in 1914, trains continued to move, orders continued to be signed, and families continued to say goodbye. The world had entered a new era of warfare, one defined by industrial power and total destruction. And the most chilling truth is this: many believed they were doing the right thing. If this story made you see World War I differently, stay with the channel and explore the next video, where we break down what happened in the very first battles and why the war immediately turned into a nightmare no one could stop. Because to understand how the modern world was born, you have to understand the day Europe chose war.